1957. A kitchen in Indiana, still dark. A woman at the counter, both hands pressing into bread dough. The radio is off. The children are asleep. She is not baking because the family needs bread. She is baking because if she stops moving her hands, she will sit down at that table and not get up again. She never told anyone. These are 17 ways women in the 50s secretly held themselves together. Everyone worked. Most have vanished. Number 17. The clothesline. Women hung laundry outside every day, even in winter. The one chore that required her to leave the house, stand in sunlight, and breathe open air. The weight of a wet cotton sheet pulled from the basket. Wooden clothespins from a canvas bag, the sound of a bedsheet catching wind and snapping flat. The smell of sun-dried linen that no dryer sheet has ever matched. 15 minutes outside, arms overhead, natural light on her face. Modern research confirms that sunlight exposure, bilateral arm movement, and outdoor air are frontline treatments for depression. She was doing all three with a basket of wet towels. She just knew the days she skipped the clothesline were worse. Number 16. The afternoon lie down. Women laid down for 20 minutes after the lunch dishes were cleared. Door closed, shades drawn. Not sleeping, just horizontal and unreachable. The chenille bedspread, the ticking alarm clock, midday light through Venetian blinds, bars of gold across the ceiling. She lay on top of the covers in her house dress. Set the alarm for 2:45 so she would be upright before the children came home. 20 minutes of stillness in a day that never stopped demanding motion. She called it a rest. It was closer to a controlled collapse, the only 20 minutes that belonged to her. Number 15. The obsessive clean. A woman scrubbing the kitchen floor on her hands and knees twice a week was not being admired for her standards. She was managing something she could not name. Spick and span powder at 20 cents a box. A scrub brush worn flat. Hands red to the wrist. The smell of Bon Ami cleanser on porcelain. Ammonia and water on the linoleum. She moved through the house room by room, corner by corner. When the house was clean, the feeling inside had somewhere to land. The visible order absorbed the invisible chaos. A clean house was the one thing she could fix, so she fixed it until her knees ached. Number 14. The radio serial. Women tuned in to daytime serials every afternoon at the same time, alone in the kitchen. They wept openly for characters whose sadness was permitted. The guiding light on CBS radio, then television after 1952. As The World Turns debuting in 1956, the slow organ music between scenes. A woman standing at the ironing board with tears running down her face over a fictional woman's grief. Because that grief had a name and a plot line, and nobody told it to be quiet. 15-minute episodes sponsored by Procter & Gamble. The term soap opera came from the detergent ads. She was not allowed to cry for herself, so she cried for Helen Trent. The tears were real, only the reason was borrowed. Number 13. The garden. A woman on her knees in the dirt pulling weeds for an hour was performing one of the most effective antidepressant rituals known to science. She called it gardening. Burpee seed packets at 10 cents each. A hand trowel with a wooden handle. The smell of turned earth after rain. Marigolds along the walk. The feeling of pulling a deep-rooted weed clean out of the soil. The resistance, the give, the release. Soil bacteria called Mycobacterium vacci have been shown to trigger serotonin production on contact with skin. She was medicating herself through her hands and never knew it. The garden did not talk back. It did not need dinner. It grew when she tended it. She could manage the garden and the radio and the scrub brush. But some days required something stronger, something with a prescription label or something hidden behind the vanilla extract. Number 12. The nerve tonic. Before tranquilizers, women bought patent medicine nerve tonics from the drugstore. Most were 15 to 25% alcohol. Lydia Pinkham's vegetable compound at 13.5% alcohol. Hadacol, marketed as a vitamin supplement, 12% alcohol, sold over the counter for $1.25 in 1950. The amber glass bottle. The tablespoon dose at 10 in the morning and again at 3, a warm herbal taste that settled the shaking in her hands. Senator Dudley LeBlanc of Louisiana created Hadacol. When asked what it was good for, he said it was good for $5.5 million for me last year. She was not drinking. She was taking her tonic. Nobody in the house questioned the difference. Number 11. The doctor's prescription. A woman who told her doctor she felt nervous or tired all the time walked out with a prescription, not a conversation. Miltown, also called meprobamate, approved in 1955. 36 million prescriptions in its first year. A small white tablet taken with water. Doctors prescribed it for anxiety, backaches, insomnia. By 1956, 1 in 20 Americans was taking it. A woman could walk into her physician's office, say the word nerves, and walk out 10 minutes later with a 30-day supply. No follow-up. 40 cents for 30 tablets. The system did not want to know what was wrong with her. It wanted her quiet. Miltown made her quiet. Number 10. The morning coffee and cigarette. The first cigarette with the first cup of coffee, alone at the table before anyone woke, was not a habit. It was the only 5 minutes of peace she got all day. Folgers or Maxwell House percolated on the stovetop, the aluminum percolator knocking softly, a Chesterfield or a Lucky Strike at 23 cents a pack. The flare of a match in the dark kitchen, the first drag drawn all the way down. Steam rising from the cup. No children talking. No husband needing. 5 minutes of caffeine and nicotine and silence at 5:50 in the morning. It was the only ritual she never shared. The house was hers for exactly as long as that cigarette lasted. Notice what is happening. Not one of these women used the word depression. They did not have the vocabulary. They had the vocabulary of housework, of chores, of keeping busy. The treatment disguised itself as the routine. The saddest part is not that they suffered. It is that they believed suffering was simply what women did. Number 9. The sewing basket. Mending, darning, embroidery, quilt piecing. Handwork that kept her fingers moving and her mind on a single stitch. A wicker sewing basket with a pin cushion lid. Spools of coats and Clark thread at 5 cents each. A steel thimble on the middle finger. The quiet pull of thread through cotton. Darning a sock over a wooden egg. The meditative focus of cross-stitch, counting, repeating, following a pattern that made sense when nothing else did. Clinicians now call it bilateral repetitive motor activity with focused attention. She called it mending. The basket sat beside her chair every evening. A woman with busy hands did not have to explain why she was quiet. Number 8. The walk to nowhere. I am going for a walk. The only acceptable sentence a housewife could use to leave her own home without a destination or a child in tow. Flat shoes, a cardigan if it was cool, no water bottle, no pedometer, no earbuds, just sidewalk and trees and her own footsteps. Around the block twice, past the Methodist church, past the gas station on Elm. 20 minutes of forward motion with no one asking a question. Rhythmic walking is now prescribed by therapists for anxiety and rumination. She did not call it exercise. She called it getting some AIR. And when she came back, she could set the table again. Number 7. The letter. Women wrote long letters to sisters, mothers, and school friends in other towns. The letter was the only private conversation she had that could not be overheard. Blue Crane stationery from the 5 and dime. A Schieffer fountain pen. The scratch of the nib on cotton paper. She sat at the kitchen table after the children were in bed and wrote 3 pages to her sister in Michigan. She said things on paper she would never say aloud. I do not know what is wrong with me. Some days I cannot make myself care about any of it. Sealed, stamped, dropped in the mailbox. 3 cents postage. The letter was the only therapist she could afford, and her sister wrote back every time. Number 6. The church pew. A woman sitting in a church pew every Sunday was doing more than worshiping. She was in the only room outside her house where nobody expected her to serve or produce anything. Wooden pews worn smooth. Hymnals with cracked spines. The pipe organ vibrating in her chest. The sound of a congregation singing, "How Great Thou Art." Not in tune, not performance, just sound from the bodies of people sitting together. A Sunday dress and gloves, the weight of being still in a room full of other women who were also still, some carrying the same unnamed heaviness. The fellowship hour afterward, weak coffee in a paper cup, and the brief coded exchange. "How are you, dear?" "Oh, I am fine, just tired." The hymn did what the nerve pill could not. It let her feel something fully in public without explanation. She found something in that pew, but the next one happened behind a locked door. It may be the most honest moment a 1950s woman ever allowed herself. Number 5. The bathroom cry. She locked the bathroom door, turned on the faucet, and cried. Then washed her face and walked out as though nothing happened. The click of the lock. A porcelain tub with claw feet. The deliberate turn of the hot water tap, enough sound to cover her voice. 5 minutes. 10. However long it took. Cold water on her face afterward. A towel pressed hard against her eyes. A quick check in the mirror. Powder compact applied under the eyes. Door unlocked. I was just freshening up. Nobody asked twice. She did not have a therapist's office. She had a bathroom with a lock. The only room in the house that had one. What we are really looking at is a generation of women who built an entire mental health system out of household objects. A clothesline, a sewing basket, a locked bathroom door, a garden trowel, a fountain pen, and a 3-cent stamp. They had no diagnostic manual, no vocabulary for what they carried. So they invented their own. And every one of their inventions is now a billable therapy technique with a name and a copay. The average therapy session in America today costs $150. Number 4. The piano. A woman at the upright piano after supper was not practicing. She was going somewhere she could not drive to. A Kimball or a Story and Clark upright, slightly out of tune. The weight of the keys under her fingers. Sheet music from the Woolworth's counter. Moonlight Sonata. Tennessee Waltz. The sustain pedal pressed down, letting the notes bleed together. Children at the dining table. Husband in his chair with the paper. Nobody interrupted because a woman at the piano was doing something respectable. Music was the one emotion she was allowed to produce in front of her family without being asked to stop. Number 3. The Bridge Club. A weekly gathering of 4 women around a card table was not a card game. It was group therapy with a cover story. A card table with a green felt top. A double deck of bicycle playing cards. Glass dishes of bridge mix. Coffee in the good china cups. 4 women in the living room on a Tuesday afternoon. The bidding was the surface. 1 heart, 2 diamonds. The conversation underneath ran deeper. Frank has been drinking again. The doctor says it is my thyroid, but I think he just wanted me out of the office. I sat in the car outside the Kroger and cried for 20 minutes. That happened between tricks at the card table. They called it bridge. It was the closest thing to a support group that era allowed, and every woman at that table knew what the others were carrying. Number 2, the ironing. Women ironed for hours, not because every shirt required pressing, because the rhythm of the iron was the closest thing to meditation in a house that never stopped needing her. A General Electric steam iron at $8.95 from the Sears catalog in 1956. The hiss of steam on damp cotton, a wooden ironing board with a scorched cover, a sprinkle bottle made from an old Coca-Cola bottle with a metal sprinkler top. She dampened the fabric, pressed forward, and for the length of one shirt, the only thing that existed was the crease. The warm, clean smell of pressed cotton and Niagara starch. 1 hour, 2 hours, a full week of laundry that could have been worn wrinkled but was pressed flat because the pressing was the point. The iron did not fix what was broken. But for 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon, the world narrowed to a single crease, and that was enough to get her to Thursday. Every item on this list has involved a woman going quiet, turning inward, pressing, kneading, walking, sewing, weeping behind a locked door. But the last one made noise, and nobody recognized it for what it was. Number 1, the bread dough. Baking from scratch, especially bread that required kneading, was the most physically demanding and emotionally complete coping ritual a 1950s woman had. Pillsbury or gold medal flour, 5 pounds for 49 cents. Fleischmann's yeast at 5 cents a packet. She combined flour, water, salt, and yeast in a crockery bowl, turned the dough onto the floured counter, and pressed. Folded, pressed again. 10 minutes of rhythmic pushing with the heels of both hands, her full weight leaning into the dough, the elastic resistance of gluten forming under her palms, the smell of yeast activating, warm and alive. Then the weight, a damp cloth over the bowl, the dough rising near the oven. An hour of watching something grow because she tended it. Then the bake. Then the smell reaching every room. The smell that made her children say decades later, "I always felt safe when the house smelled like bread." Kneading bread is now a recognized therapeutic practice. The rhythmic movement, the sensory grounding, the measurable result. She could not control what she felt, but she could feed her family something warm she made with her own hands. On the worst mornings, that was the thread that held everything together. And somewhere this morning, before the sun came up, a woman stood alone at a kitchen counter pressing her hands into dough. She could not tell you why it helped, but it did. If you want more forgotten wisdom from the generations who came before us, the next video is waiting for you right now.